So today is Monday, July 8th. So those of you who have been following my mental health journey, you know I've reviewed tons of different medications that I've tried for ADHD, depression, and anxiety. And for one reason or another, they haven't really worked. I've had allergic reactions to some. I tend to be very sensitive to medication. I am on 3 medications right now. I am on what is it? It's clonazepam, 0.5 milligrams of clonazepam, and that's mostly for the anxiety and the startle reflex that I talked about. I have an exaggerated startle reflex, and I think that has something to do with my cerebral palsy. And upon doing some research, I found that clonazepam actually helps with like exaggerated startle. So I started on that. I'm also taking Effexor for the depression, and my provider recently increased my dose from 75 to 150 milligrams, and it's been making me nauseous, so I'm not a big fan of that. And for ADHD, I am taking 26.1 milligrams of Asteris. I think that's how you say that medication. Anyway, point being that a couple of years ago, I started researching transcranial magnetic stimulation, so TMS. And I found a place near me that does it. And for those of you that don't know what it is, I don't know if I'm explaining this correctly, but essentially they send electric signals to your brain to kind of stimulate those parts of your brain that may be not so active when you're suffering from depression, which I have suffered from for as long as I can remember. I have a diagnosis of major depressive disorder, ADHD, and generalized anxiety disorder. And 2 years ago, when I first came across it, I called the clinic. I gave them a call, and I gave them my insurance information, which at the time I was under my son's dad's insurance. And with that insurance, I would have to pay $5,000 out of pocket. And this was back in 2022. And I told them I just couldn't afford it. So I left it at that and continued with medication. Recently, I started working. Been working for a little over a year as a school SLP. And so now I have my own insurance. I decided to reach out to them again. They ran my new insurance, and they told me that this time with my current health benefits, I would only have to pay $30 per visit out of pocket. Now, granted, this treatment does have to, it's like a 5-day-a-week treatment. So just for 1 week, it would still be like $150 for those 5 visits out of pocket. But that's doable. It's much more manageable than the $5,000 that they were initially trying to charge me. And so I feel like I can't pass this opportunity up, especially because I have to complete an internship next year in August. So that means I'm only going to be working at my current school district for 1 more year, and then essentially I have to be unemployed for an entire year, because as part of my requirements for my master's program is that I complete a full-time school placement doing what I'm doing now, but unpaid in a different location, which doesn't make much sense, but it is what it is. Anyway, so knowing that I'm not going to have this insurance for very long, I'm only going to have it for another 9 months or so, I felt like I really kind of needed to take advantage of that. And so I went ahead with the process of starting the process of getting TMS. So the first thing is they had me fill out a questionnaire, and it was extensive, right? It asked me my medical history, demographic information. Then it asks a bunch of questions related to depression, like in the past 2 weeks, how often have you felt hopeless? How often have you felt like a failure? And then it asked a bunch of questions related to anxiety and OCD and bipolar disorder. It asks about my family history. And I think one of the requirements for my insurance to be able to cover the TMS is for them to be able to show that I've tried different medications and they don't seem to be working. So you have to have tried, I don't know, like 2 or 3 different antidepressants, and you have to have tried counseling, so talk therapy, which I did. I have had depression and anxiety for as long as I can remember, but I didn't really start to proactively try to do something about it until about 2019. That's not true. I think 2012 I went to counseling for a while. Um, and then I just stopped because my counselor retired and I just didn't want to start all over again. So then I went through like a whole lapse of time where I didn't get any counseling or medication or anything. And then in 2019, I started having my anxiety was getting out of control, and my depression was getting in the way of my studies and being a mom and everything. So it was in 2019 when I finally decided to start to try medication. And I was 29 years old at the time. And prior to that, the only thing I had tried in terms of like mental health was counseling, right? So therapy. So 2019, I went back on medication and I started counseling up again. But I don't know if maybe the diagnoses aren't quite right, or it's just the medications don't work for me the way they should, but they've all had side effects. I think it was Zoloft that made me gain over 20 pounds. Plenty of them have made me nauseous. One of them was unbearable to the point where I would literally, every single day that I took the medication, I think it was lamotrigine, it made me throw up every day. And then Wellbutrin, I ended up having an allergic reaction to. Anyway, so that's just a couple of the medications I've been through. So I really have no trouble, no problem kind of showing my history and the different medications and treatment methods that I've tried to work on my anxiety and my depression. So yeah, I'm actually kind of excited about this because it's like an entirely new treatment that I'm about to embark on. I've heard that it feels like a woodpecker constantly pecking at your skull, which doesn't sound very pleasant, but it's not really supposed to be painful. If anything, maybe mildly painful, but not really. And so I filled out the intake questionnaire. So then I have an appointment on the 19th, and this is the next step in the process, is to go to have a virtual appointment with the provider who will be administering the TMS treatment for me, and that will be virtual, and that's going to be about an hour long. And I don't know how it's any different from all the intake like questions that I filled out online, but I'm assuming he's probably just going to go through my information, talk about the treatment, ask me what I want to get out of it. And then, like a week later on the 23rd, I have to go into his office for my first actual TMS treatment. And I think they do like brain mapping and whatnot during that first session. So they told me to expect to be at the first in-person appointment for about an hour to an hour and a half. But every session after that will be about 20 to 30 minutes. And again, treatment has to be 5 days a week for 20 to 30 minutes consecutively for a total of 36 treatments. I know that this treatment is FDA approved for depression. I don't know if it's technically approved for anxiety too, but I've heard that it can help alleviate some anxiety, and I've also heard that a lot of patients don't really see a difference until they're getting close to like nearing the end of treatment, when they have 1 or 2 sessions left. And for some patients, they don't see a difference until a couple weeks after treatment has concluded. So I'm just going to try to keep that in mind as I go along, and I'm going to do my very best to come on here at least weekly to update you guys on like how my treatment's going, what it feels like, and if there's really any improvements in my overall mood as we kind of go along. So if that is something that you guys are interested in, feel free to follow me on my TMS journey.